Delighted to start the afternoon session. Again, recognizing that this is sponsored, Karma Gold Business Partner sponsor for the Wednesday session. So, a bit of a double session for you here. Two very different campaigns, two award-winning agencies under the same umbrella ownership. So let me introduce you to AMEC, and he will introduce the panel and run the session.
Thanks, Barry. I just thought I'd spend a little bit of time explaining the theme here, because we've gone a little bit off track in terms of the conference theme. So apologies to Barry, we went a bit freestyle with it. Data beyond measurement. I wanted to just talk a little bit about my first job in the industry, I suppose. 20 years ago was at Mill Brown Precy. So I started off about 1997, I think, crunching through databases for the likes of BMW and Boots and so on. And I spent an immense amount of time, days and nights, I don't know whether my old boss is here, crunching through data to produce what I thought were these beautiful reports, beautifully thought through, provocative, strategically insightful reports, but always with a niggling fear that these reports would go to clients and sit in a drawer until there was a board meeting or a client meeting where there was a need to justify PR, pulled out, waved in the air, and then chucked back in again to gather dust. So that's been a slight bugbear of mine over the years, the fact that within data there is so much more than simply just evaluation to look at. So the kind of start point was that. Now, obviously, things have hugely changed nowadays. I don't need to talk in depth about big data, but we know, the concept of analytics data pervades every single aspect of campaign development, campaign activation, campaign management. It's not just used to measure at the end. It's used to mine the insights that form the strategies. It's used to monitor and amend strategies, and it's an immensely powerful tool if it's used properly. Certainly, within our industry and within our agency, within Weber Shandwick, we've got a team of about 5 or 6 dedicated to data. Julian's in the room somewhere here, heading up a team in Germany, purely around data and analytics. And I've recently recruited someone from a CRM background to kind of come in and bring a customer loyalty perspective to that. So, we all recognize that it's become important. But an interesting development more recently has been the broader marketing industry wanting to celebrate and highlight campaigns that actually use data in the activation. So people are familiar with the British Airways campaign, with the moving billboard at Piccadilly Circus that would link into the GPS system of British Airways, and every time a BA flight flew over, a little boy would walk across the screen and point at the plane. Very data-driven. Recently recognised by Cannes Lions. We've been doing quite a bit with Cannes Lions around their new innovation festival, and a massive part of that is data. Increasingly, campaigns are being recognised for that. And I guess the point I wanted to make was data is, obviously, we are rightfully focused on measurement here, but there is much more to celebrate about data. So I wanted to kind of make that point at the front of this. I'm a big fan of, once upon a time, a man who's much brighter than me said you've got to put an obscure visual analogy into a presentation so that people remember some of the points you're making. Here is one, an obscure visual analogy. The Pompidou Centre in Paris. And I'm just going to use it as a bit of an analogy for where I think data has come and where it's come from. Pompidou Centre, built in 1977, and as you can see really from this, proudly displaying all its inner workings on the outside to create a better space inside. And I think there's a nice parallel there with some of the campaigns we're seeing that wear data proudly on the outside, rather than kind of keeping it in a dark back room as a kind of powerhouse that drives the campaign, actually celebrating it and having it on the outside. When it was first sort of built and unveiled, it was fairly well derided by everyone from politicians to the Figaro, who I think called it the monster of Paris's own monster, I think they called it. They compared it to the Loch Ness Monster. And so importantly, it wasn't always seen as cool, but more recently it's got lots of celebrations. It's had lots of awards. Renzo Piano and Lord Foster have got some great recognition for this, and importantly, most importantly, it's kind of been seen to have sort of turned upside down the world of architecture, or inside out in this case. So was cool back in the day. It wasn't cool back in the day, but is now widely celebrated. Again, data. Back in the day when I was stuck in a I think we had at one point we were in an old hairdressing salon in the back of Victoria, crunching through these reports. Wasn't very celebrated. Now it is becoming a massive force in marketing, and we're all seeing that. And then finally, another parallel with the data movement is it's not just about the modern art. So you kind of go, there's a library in there, there's an amazing restaurant, that's one of the best views in Paris at the top. You know, it's not just used for one particular purpose, it has multiple purposes. And again, emphasize the point that, you know, data is very important from a measurement perspective, but actually what we want to do is kind of celebrate all the different ways in which it can contribute to a campaign and contribute to communication and engagement. So I wanted to kind of introduce, and unfortunately, Heather is not here, as Barry just said. Two campaigns. I wanted to take a campaign perspective on data and data's impact on particular campaigns. And there were two within our network that have won many, many awards and are genius campaigns in their own right. The first one was going to be presented by Heather Mitchell, who is, as Barry said, in the air at the moment. Actually, I'll take this opportunity to thank Frida and Marcus for stepping in and actually filling the session a bit more with curators of Sweden. Heather will be around later, and she'll be around tomorrow. I will encourage you to kind of ask her questions about this, and I'm going to show you some of her slides. The irony is not lost on me that someone who has no hair is talking about all things hair, but I will do my best. It should be no things hair. So Heather can't be with us. I'm also going to introduce Frida Roberts, who is head of the communications unit at the Swedish Institute. And that's the body that is responsible for the promotion of Sweden and its values across the world, part of the Foreign Affairs Department, the Swedish government. And she has been responsible and co-founder of the Curators of Sweden project, which is another genius idea that she's going to take you through with Marcus Larsson, who is one of our best analytics brains within our group for United Minds. He has worked very closely in partnership with Frida on this project, is the kind of data brains behind it, and also supports other clients such as IKEA and Ericsson and Electrolux. So we've got some interesting kind of people on stage regardless of Heather's absence. So just really quickly on all things hair. I don't know whether people are familiar with the campaign, but essentially it is a multi-brand campaign, platform campaign that sits under Unilever's, that sort of binds together Unilever's hair care brands. And it's based on its origin, I guess, was in this. So it was a campaign. It had, I'm reliably informed, no brief. It didn't have a budget attached to it. An agency went to Unilever, an agency group, including ourselves and Razorfish, went to Unilever with an idea. And the idea was based on the insight that there are 11 billion hair searches a year that happen through Google. But that pretty much people weren't really looking for they wouldn't go to brand sites. They would go to video bloggers and sort of online influencers. So the whole premise of the campaign was born out of a data analysis project. And it's essentially a kind of site that responds to everyone's questions about hair. I encourage you to visit it if you have hair, unlike me, after this session. Considerably less now I'm doing these slides that Heather was going to do. A little video.
All Things Hair constantly monitors hair searches to see what women are looking for, bringing together the biggest search engine, the biggest hair brands, and the world's best YouTubers, making it the glossy go-to guide for great hair. There they can browse by hair type, find all the latest hair trends, treatments and how-tos, helping women worldwide banish bad hair days for good.
All things hair. I'm going to skip through these because it's just an illustration of the campaign. So it kind of lives on. It lives online. It's an online campaign, a web hub, and very heavy on social media as well. And people kind of are directed to the site through search strategies and so on. And it's been really immensely successful for Unilever. I don't think they expected the success that it's had. There's some big figures there. I won't run through. Interestingly, when I come to a further point, they've produced around 600 pieces of video content through bloggers like Zoella. In fact, I think she's on the next page. For a second. I'll come on to that in a minute. Let me go back. They produce lots and lots of videos, and they've kind of consolidated their position as a portfolio business for being number one in hair care, and it's been massively successful at Unilever, and successful in terms of awards. It's won lots of recognition industry-wide for taking an innovative approach. And Heather was saying that it's been a very hard project to get underway because Unilever's standard approach is to start from the product and work to the audience, and this has been all about starting with the audience and what they're saying and what they're wanting, and feeding product conversations into that. So it's a very different approach for them. In terms of people who kind of visit the site and who've visited and registered, immensely powerful in terms of driving purchase, immensely powerful in terms of the brands feeling more appealing, and it's seen as a more enjoyable mechanic than traditional advertising, which I don't think is a massive surprise. Why does it work? 3 things, really. One is it uses social influencers. So if you weren't born in the 90s, like me, you were born in the 70s, you might not know who some of these people are. But Zoella on the right, for example, they've worked very closely with Zoella, and they caught her on the way up. When she was kind of on the way to becoming the superstar that she's become. I think she just outsold J.K. Rowling in terms of her first book. So they work very closely with social influencers who are kind of real people, essentially. So a very important authenticity message here. So that was kind of the first most important thing that's made it a success. Secondly, this is where data comes in, actually. So in the 5 minutes before Heather had to get on the plane earlier, I was talking to her, and she said the really interesting thing is how they are able to leverage data to make the content they develop much more tailored to specific vloggers and specific bloggers. So they have a kind of collaborative team internally across all the brands that work together on analysing the data that gives them insight into the sort of content they can make. So, they might find that a particular vlogger is interested in a particular theme, and they will make a piece of content and send it out. So there's an incredible amount of data analysis that goes on to produce those 600 pieces of content that I talked about earlier. And then, importantly, as I sort of referenced a bit earlier, they're designed around, so it's from the bottom up, not the top down. So it is literally about listening to people and creating content from that perspective, rather than saying, I am Tresemme, I am Dove, this is what I want to say. So it's a very, very different way, again, of working from a Unilever perspective, and clearly very effective in that way. They didn't solve a problem by creating an advertising campaign. It was very much a listening campaign, and we are seeing across numerous of our clients, actually, I think United Minds have done some great work in this area with IKEA around the Life at Home project that I think you've just done the second phase of that, haven't you? Just launched the second phase. Listening to people and their views and building campaigns around that rather than kind of coming at it from a command and control model. Doing some really interesting work with a cereal client at the moment about doing almost an open listening project that asks mums in a very open way about their wishes, and we develop content on the back of that. And then I just think this is a really powerful quote. I've been to a few. Where was this? It must have been the ICCO conference, I think, in Paris, either last year or the year before. And I think David Rockwell was talking about how it was very important, obviously, to have data people in a business, but actually it's about having the people who are able to translate that data into insights. So this is, it's about using data for insights. And again, this is a key point data beyond measurement is using that data to mine the insights that we can build great campaigns on. So that's my very amateur presentation of Heather's slides. I'm going to hand over to Marcus and Frida to talk a little bit about Curators of Sweden, which is a fantastic campaign.
Thank you. Thank you. So my name is Fred Roberts, and I work at the Swedish Institute as head of the communications unit there. A few words about the Swedish Institute. It's a government agency under the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. We have a number of different assignments, but you can say that we have one overall purpose, and that is to increase awareness and build trust in Sweden in civil societies in other countries. So what we do is often referred to as public diplomacy or nation branding. And today I'm here to speak about Curators of Sweden. Sweden's official communication channel on Twitter, which has turned out to be the most inspiring but also the most frightening experience so far in my professional life. So let's start out with a short film to... we'll start with this. This is Brand Sweden. It defines Sweden as authentic, open, innovative and caring. In one word, progressive, meaning a country that believes in progress, in development, not overnight, no revolutions in Sweden, consensus and together and all that, and on the terms and the conditions of the people and the environment. And it was exactly these core values that we, through Curators of Sweden, wanted to activate, to demonstrate in practice. We wanted to go to speaking about our society as being this authentic and open and innovative society to actually proving it in practice by handing over complete and uncensored control of an official communication channel to ordinary people.
In Sweden, something unusual is happening. Normally, a country that has a Twitter account has that account run by an official of the government. Not so in Sweden. The people there are actually in charge.
In 2011, we became the first country in the world to let go of an official communication channel and hand it over to our citizens. Together with the Swedish Institute and Visit Sweden, we decided to break all branding principles and revolutionize the voice of a country. Every week, someone in Sweden is at Sweden, sole ruler of the world's most democratic Twitter account. For 7 days, he or she shares their everyday life, private opinions, and general reflections. After that, someone else does the same, but differently. This is a simple way to give tips and advice on where to go on your holiday in Sweden. And a great way to interact with people around the world. We can easily share traditional Swedish food, as well as our taste in music or cinema. You can come with us to a regular day at work, or hang out with us on our free time, both in the busy city and out in the wild. The response was overwhelming. We attracted over 25,000 followers from 120 countries and started thousands of conversations. Sweden trended on Twitter worldwide, sparking discussions on transparency in social media and how technology can be used for democracy, as well as inspiring citizens in other countries to start similar accounts. The initiative has been featured all over the world. Some think it's just a clever PR campaign. Others believe that it's a beacon of free speech in a time when we need it more than ever. For us, it's the only way to paint a fair picture of Sweden for the rest of the world. Swede by Swede. Tweet by tweet.
So in December 2011, Sweden was the first country in the world to hand over complete control to ordinary citizens of Sweden. And the idea is so incredibly simple. For 7 days, a normal, ordinary person share his or hers life stories, ideas, thoughts, jokes, images, videos, whatever. And the following Monday, somebody does the same, but completely differently. So far, we have had 100 more, actually, than 170 different curators with 170 different backgrounds who have painted more than 170 different images of Sweden. And the result is, of course, not one perfect, glossy, streamlined image of a country. Instead, we believe that it represents the diversity that a Sweden of today is actually built on. So tweet by tweet and curator by curator, we are then conveying this updated, authentic image of a country, which is so much more than cute little blonde girls and boys dancing around midsummer poles and elks and red cottages and Ingmar Bergman and all that. But initially, this project had a lot of critics, even in my own organization. It was very tough the first year, I would say. And there was, of course, not so strange, but still a fear that people would talk about nonsense, and that where they would talk about controversial topics, and thereby we would lose followers or have PR crisis and actually damage the image of Sweden. So, of course, we have looked into this, and with the help of Marcus as well. So, incidents. So this highly controversial project has, of course, had a few incidents, but surprisingly few, considering that we're dealing with a completely open channel with very few rules. And why would I bring up the incidents? Because there hasn't been that many, and it's because I think they're important. It's the incident, the problems, the challenges that in practice has tested and validated the concept behind Curator of Sweden. In theory, everybody loves, not everybody, but a lot of us love freedom of speech. But in practice, it can become rather messy sometimes. So the first incident, which now in retrospect is quite innocent, but then was a big deal in my life, happened the first week of this project in December 2011. And the first charming curator, Jack, he jump-started this project, and he was tremendously open and witty and funny, and the response was fantastic. He got hundreds of questions about life in Sweden, and he got this very relevant question living in Sweden: how do you survive the long and dark, cold Swedish winters? And he answered honestly, I guess I'm drinking a lot of coffee, lighting my face up with my laptop and hanging out with friends. Oh, and you know, masturbation. I literally choked on my coffee. So bear in mind, this is an official channel. This is the first week of this project. I had a little bit of a difficulty walking up the stairs explaining this to the Director General. Just so you know, if they call you from the Department of Foreign Affairs, this happened. And anyway, a lot of people thought it was time to pull the plug of this experiment, but we thought otherwise. Another type of incident happened when two Swedish journalists were convicted for terrorist crime in Ethiopia, and this was a huge deal in this country. That week's curator, Hassan, strongly attacked the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Carl Bildt, the ex-Minister for Foreign Affairs, for not doing enough, again and again and again. And he did this from an official communication channel and with the whole world as an audience. This is just one. You need to step up, Carl Bildt. You need to let us know that you got our backs. You are a leader, now lead. And from a Swedish perspective, this is not a big deal, but from an international perspective, that you can criticize a Minister for Foreign Affairs like this again and again and again in front of the whole world on an official channel. It got a lot of attention, to say the least, in the world. But these incidents just come to show that we have strong enough freedom of speech to handle these types of incidents and move on. So, one of the fears we've had is that those controversial incidents would lead to not only damaging our image of the country, but also a lack of followers over time. So we asked Marcus to have a look at this.
Thank you. So from my United Minds perspective, we've been following this campaign as it was, or this experiment for a while then, but we were contacted in a year into the campaign, and we heard about this criticism then that Sweden's official channel could sort of be drained on followers due to these controversies, and reading the Jack's and his posts, suddenly this became understandable. So what we did was, and we'll sort of present a couple of hacks, if you will, we've done during the campaign. We just checked whether this was the case simply by looking at the follower change. So as long as it's around 0 here, you got no change from one day to the next. So every dot is a new day. But if we look at the most controversial curators, Frida mentioned Jack at the beginning there, but the other 3 curators here were also in different ways quite controversial, talking about freedom of speech being obscene in different ways and so forth. But the result was very clear that these people were in fact the ones that had drawn the most new followers to the Sweden account. So that was one way of letting data tell us that this experiment should actually continue. And this was another one.
Another fear was that without moderating them at all and just giving them free hands, they would talk about nonsense and not at all about topics that would be in line with our official prioritized themes and topics.
So we did another hack. We scraped the Sweden account during the first year of operation, so to speak, and did a text analysis on all the content. So obviously skipping through a couple of these steps for clarity and time necessities. But we categorized all the tweets in different categories, these ones. And what we could see with quite some clarity as well was that even though the curators weren't handpicked by a Swedish institute or anyone else, and even though they weren't told what to talk about but talked freely, they were actually speaking about the topics that were the preferred ones for Swedish institutes and other Sweden promoting organizations. I don't know if you want to fill in on the different topics.
Yeah, no, it's for me personally sort of a wonderful insight, because this validated the whole project. And not only did it validate the project and gave me a good argument, it also, funnily enough, validated the choice of prioritized themes by the organization working with promoting Sweden abroad, since they coincided. So that was also just an interesting side effect of this.
Yeah.
Very quickly, ending, results. Despite all the critics, this has been actually the most, in terms of return on investment, the most successful communication initiative so far. We have had a nice bonus has been that we have won over 45 international and national communications awards with the Grand Prix in Cannes, the crown jewel, of course. It has led to a global movement, rotation curation, with every new followers thanking Sweden. You can check it out on Wikipedia, rotation curation. But most importantly, through Curator of Sweden, we have managed to reach out and interact with people in over 120 countries all over the world. And by doing so, I think given them a little bit more diversified image of something as complex as a society, and this now being Sweden.
Just a massive thanks to these guys for stepping up today when we had a dropout. But hopefully you've seen kind of 2 very different campaigns that use data have used data in slightly different ways, absolutely for evaluation, as further charts behind that would show. But yeah, I just wanted us to be able to talk a little bit about the campaign perspective and how data can be a much bigger part of a campaign. And this campaign in particular has been very interesting in that area.
Yeah.
So that was us.
Okay, let's see if anyone's got a question about any of the work. It's interesting. Okay, I've got a question for you. And there's one at the back as well. You seem to have started the campaign, Frida, and then after it hit a bump in the road, brought in the analytics experts to help rather than having them on board to begin with. Is that fair or unfair?
That's right. We were actually jumping in head first from the start. So it was actually 1 year into the project. But now we're looking at developing the concept, because it's very easy to get complacent when there's a success. And here, data has become a really big part. So we're working on that right now, actually.
Okay. Question at the back.
Yeah, my name is Lasse Skjolden. I'm with Infomedia in Denmark. Kudos to your project. It looks really great. I'm just very curious about the handpicking or selection of the Twitters. I just read about it on your website, and you can nominate yourself or some other person that's active on Twitter. But is there a sort of committee choosing the ones?
Yeah, you can't nominate yourself actually, but each curator is asked to nominate other candidates, and anybody can nominate anybody, and with sort of a motivation. And then there is actually a selection committee with different people with different skills, looking at all the nominated people, and with the idea of presenting a diversified image of our country. So in terms of, you know, gender, sexuality, age, geography, the lot, areas of interests. And you also have to be used with the tool Twitter, of course. That is a requirement.
Just following up, have you had any reactions to this parenthesis on the openness on the project, that you have to be selected?
Yes, it has been discussions, but it's rather the incidents that have been sort of the big sort of media crisis, rather than that aspect.
So you would evaluate it as a sound thing to do, to have some sort of pre-selection?
I think actually it's necessary in order for us to get this broad diversity that we're looking for. And a recent change we did, originally we had only, you had to be a Swedish citizen. And now we have opened up, which is, I think is natural, to anybody living in Sweden. So it can be a student in Sweden, an immigrant, anybody. So which I think is a very, very pleasant development to give another dimension of our country.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Adam, Frida, Marcus, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.